The dense, shadowy forest shrouded her in an eerie silence as she woke abruptly, gasping for air. Her vision blurred and her limbs felt heavy, as though she had been lying there for an eternity. Before she could gather her thoughts, a sudden weight pressed against her chest. A young woman, her pale face framed by wild black hair, leaned in close. The stranger's golden eyes burned with malicious glee, her grip unyielding around the other woman's neck. The attacker's hand darted toward a gold chain around her victim's neck. The pendant, a ruby-encrusted moth, caught the faint light filtering through the treetops and gleamed like a tiny flame. The thief's grin widened as she yanked it free. She straightened, holding the pendant aloft like a trophy, and laughed mockingly. "You won't need this where you're going," she sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. Without another word, the thief shoved her victim aside and vanished into the forest. Weak and disoriented, the woman on the ground struggled to sit up. She coughed, her throat raw from the attack, and reached instinctively for the now empty space where the pendant had hung. Her fingers trembled as they brushed against her bare skin. Something about the pendant felt vital, though she couldn't explain why. Her thoughts were a chaotic blur, her memories missing entirely. She had no idea how she had come to be here or even who she was. The only certainty she clung to was that the pendant had to be recovered. Her surroundings offered no comfort. The forest seemed alive with malice, the skeletal trees casting jagged shadows that reached like claws. The earth beneath her feet was cracked and dry, as if drained of all vitality. She realized then that her boots were missing. The thief had stripped her of almost everything: boots, gloves, and even the thick cloak that had shielded her from the chill. All that remained were a worn scarlet bandeau and leather breeches, barely enough to protect her from the forest's biting winds. Pushing herself upright, she wavered but forced herself to stand. Ahead, a faint trail of golden amber light shimmered in the air, marking the thief's path. The glow was unnatural, reminding her of decay and sickness. It repelled and intrigued her in equal measure. Driven by a need she couldn't articulate, she followed the trail. Every step was agony on her bare feet, the sharp stones and brittle twigs biting into her skin. Her body ached and her head throbbed with each labored breath, but she refused to stop. After hours of relentless pursuit, she stumbled into a small village nestled in a hollow. The sight that greeted her was far from reassuring. The buildings were a patchwork of crumbling stone and warped wood, leaning precariously as though ready to collapse. A pervasive sense of decay hung over the settlement, mirrored in the appearance of its inhabitants. The villagers moved sluggishly, their pale skin and sunken eyes giving them an almost spectral quality. They emanated the same sickly golden glow that marked the thief's trail. Their dull gazes shifted uneasily as she entered, her striking presence a stark contrast to their frailty. Among the crowd, a flash of red and black caught her eye. The thief was standing near a market stall, laughing with a copper-haired companion. The stolen pendant dangled from her fingers, its ruby glinting mockingly in the dim light. Rage surged through her. Ignoring the villagers' wary stares, she stormed toward the thief. Her anger flared hotter with every step, and by the time she reached her target, it was a roaring inferno. The confrontation was swift and brutal. She grabbed the thief by the arm and spun her around, shoving her into a stack of crates. The thief's laughter turned to a startled yelp as she was forced to the ground. Straddling her, the woman wrapped her hands around the thief's neck, her grip tight and unyielding. "How does it feel?" she demanded, her voice low and venomous. "How does it feel to be powerless?" The villagers gasped, their murmurs swelling into a wave of alarm. They hesitated, torn between fear of the newcomer and concern for one of their own. "Enough!" A sharp, commanding voice cut through the commotion. A man stepped forward, his presence authoritative despite his weathered appearance. He carried a long, jagged blade, and the way he wielded it suggested he knew how to use it. His eyes locked onto the woman with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "Let her go," he ordered, his voice steady. She didn't move, her anger clouding her judgment. The man's grip on his weapon tightened, and he took a step closer. "I said, let her go," he repeated, this time pressing the blade's cold edge against her cheek. The threat broke through her rage, and she slowly released the thief. The woman beneath her gasped for air, scrambling away the moment she was free. The villagers closed ranks around the thief, their eyes darting between the newcomer and the man with the blade. Tension crackled in the air as everyone waited to see what would happen next. The man lowered his weapon slightly but kept it at the ready. His gaze never wavered. "Who are you?" he asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. She opened her mouth to answer but found no words. The question echoed in her mind, a hollow void where an answer should have been. "You don't know, do you?" the man said, his voice softer now. She shook her head, her frustration mounting. The weight of her amnesia pressed heavily on her chest, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. The pendant was all that mattered. Her eyes darted to the thief, who clutched the stolen item protectively. The thief's smug grin had returned, and she seemed emboldened by the crowd's support. The man followed her gaze and sighed. "You're not from here. That much is obvious." He glanced at the villagers, who shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny. "But you've caused enough trouble for one day. If you want to stay in one piece, you'll have to play by our rules." His words carried an unspoken warning, and she knew better than to challenge him. But as the crowd began to disperse, her resolve only hardened. She would bide her time, but she wouldn't leave without reclaiming what was hers. As the villagers retreated to the shadows, the woman remained still, her mind racing. She didn't know who she was or how she had ended up here, but she knew one thing for certain. The pendant was more than just a piece of jewelry. It held answers, a connection to her missing past. And she would stop at nothing to get it back. I kneel in the mud as rain carves icy trails down my skin, the guard's voice ringing in my ears. Dashmala. The word feels heavy, but its meaning eludes me. Around me, the villagers press closer, their faint amber glows dampened by the storm. Their eyes seethe with suspicion, their murmurs tinged with hostility. Pain flares in my ribs as I push to stand. Olivia holds my pendant, her fingers tracing its edges as though deliberating. My chest tightens. That pendant is all I have. I lurch toward her, but the guard's grips tighten, pinning me back. "This is a mistake," Olivia says, her voice trembling. "She's not Dashmala. She's not dangerous." Narder, the lead guard, sneers. "We'll see. She's going to the clink. If she makes it, maybe we'll figure out what to do with her." "No," Olivia snaps, stepping forward. "You're wrong, enough." Narder yanks me forward. My feet scrape through the mud as he drags me toward the looming shack at the village's edge. Its rotting beams and sagging roof seem to groan under the weight of despair. The villagers follow at a cautious distance, whispering as if their words alone might doom me. Amid the crowd, I see her, Night Star sparkle. She stands apart, her shawl casting shadows over her face. Our eyes meet. My mouth forms a silent plea, "Help me." But her thoughts brush against mine like an echo. "You must save yourself." Inside, the shack is worse than I imagined. The air reeks of mildew, and the damp earth floor squelches underfoot. Chains dangle from the walls, rusted and thick. A man lies in the corner, unmoving, his amber glow faint and sickly. Narder shoves me forward, his laugh cold. "Welcome home. Get comfortable, if you can." The door slams shut, sealing me in darkness. For a moment, I'm frozen, the weight of the room pressing down on me. My ribs throb, and the absence of my pendant feels like a hollow ache in my chest. The faint flickers of the other prisoners' glows offer no comfort, their light more mournful than hopeful. Rain drums against the roof. I close my eyes, willing memories to come, but they remain stubbornly out of reach. All I have is the guard's contempt, the villagers' fear, and Night Star Sparkle's cryptic warning. Time drags, the shack's silence broken only by distant thunder. I don't know how long I sit there before the door creaks open. Light spills into the room, and Olivia steps inside, her face pale but determined. "Get up," she whispers urgently. I blink at her, unsure if she's real. "Why?" "Because if you stay, you'll die." She pulls a small iron key from her cloak and glances over her shoulder. "Come on." I hesitate but push myself upright, my body protesting with every movement. Olivia works quickly, unlocking the shack's chains and gesturing me outside. The village is shrouded in rain and shadow. Most of the villagers have retreated indoors, their amber glows dimmed by exhaustion and fear. Olivia moves silently, leading me through narrow alleys. "Why are you helping me?" I ask. She doesn't look at me. "Because you're not the only one trying to survive." At the forest's edge, Olivia halts and hands me the pendant. The weight of it in my palm is a relief, its cool surface grounding me. "I thought it might be worth something," she admits, avoiding my gaze. "But it's not worth your life or mine." I stare at her, questions bubbling to the surface, but a shout from the village pierces the air. Torches flicker and the sound of boots grows louder. They're coming, Olivia says, her voice sharp. Run. Clutching the pendant, I dart into the woods. Branches whip at my skin, and the damp earth sucks at my feet, but I keep moving. The shouts behind me fade, swallowed by the forest's dense silence. Only when I'm sure I'm alone do I slow. My breath comes in ragged gasps, the pendant warm in my hand. The warmth stirs something within me. A flicker of a memory, a name on the edge of my thoughts. But like everything else, it slips away. The rain softens to a mist, the forest alive with whispers of wind and rustling leaves. The villagers' hatred, the guards' cruelty, Olivia's unexpected kindness. They swirl in my mind like a storm. But I'm free. For now. I grip the pendant tighter. I don't know who I am or where I came from, but I will find out. And I will never let anyone take what's mine again.